Welcome! Today we're going to be putting the entirety of the Tortured Poets Department album in chronological order based on when I think Taylor wrote these songs. I'm doing this for this album in particular because every one of these songs is just so, well, almost every one of them is so incredibly specific that it is actually possible to do this. Without further ado, let's get started. So first over here, I have the entirety of the 31 tracks from the Tortured Poets Department and Tortured Poets Department, the Anthology. And over to the right, I've just built a little timeline. So first we have her relationship with Joe Alwyn, of course, then that ends, and almost immediately she moves on to Maddie Healy. Then the public finds out about Maddie Healy, which causes a bunch of public outlash. Then very quickly, actually, they break up, and then the public finds out about that again. And then here in kind of the post-Maddie era, I've also put a little dash for the Maddie heartbreak gets somewhat better, but Taylor's just still really mad at the press because they've just took this narrative and kept on going with. And then after all this happens, of course, we have her relationship with Travis Kelce, who she's with now. And of course, since this is a Taylor Swift album, I felt obliged to put a this could have been written in 2014 and I wouldn't know box because there's some songs that are still just so unspecific or aren't even about like a real event. Also, for anybody that doesn't know, the whole thing with Maddie Healy is that she was with him back in 2014, and she kept apparently fantasizing about him, as we see in many of these songs throughout the years, until she finally broke up with Joe and got back together with him. Continuing that train of thought, for our first song, Fortnight. Now, this is a difficult one because I feel like at first everybody was like, oh, a fortnight, she was with Maddie Healy in 2023 for like barely any time. She must be talking about their relationship. And I agree, but I think she's actually talking about their relationship all the way back in 2014. Now, when could this have been written? I'm going to put it right over, like right in here. So during the time that she was with Maddie in 2023. Why do I think that is? Well, a lot of people have pointed out that the styles of the music video, just the style of the song in general, point to the fact that this might have actually been written with Maddie Healy, and Post Malone is literally just like a stand-in for him. That's a very popular theory, and honestly, I kind of believe it. So I'm gonna put this here. But if we look at the lyrics, this is definitely about them kind of running into each other over the years after their fling in 2014, because she says she runs into him sometimes, asks about the weather, and they share a lot of common friends. They were at award shows, etc. This is not, I'm not determining the meaning of all these songs. Well, I kind of am, but it's okay. Let's move on to the Tortured Poets Department. Also, definitely about Maddie, the whole like typewriter aesthetic vibe, but here she's kind of like making fun of him for liking typewriters, The whole song is giving like you are trying to get out of this relationship a little bit, or you're like putting spikes down on the road, but I still want to stay with you. So this has to be somewhere around, I'd say like here, because this has to be the point where things like towards the end of their relationship where things start going a little bit south, and Taylor's like I see that, and I'm still gonna stick with it. Like I feel like that's the vibe of the song. Moving on to My Boy Only Breaks His Favorite Toys. In this song, she's still with Maddie, but I feel like this is like Tortured Poets Department Part 2, where she's like, dang, things are going like really, really not well. So I think I'm gonna put that like after the Tortured Poets Department. Like in the Tortured Poets Department, she says, but you awaken with dread, pounding nails in your head. But she's like, you know what, it's okay, I'll calm you down. And then in My Boy Only Breaks His Favorite Toys, she's like, oh, here we go again, the voice is in his head. So she's kind of like, she's over it. And she says, there was a litany of reasons why we could have played for keeps this time, which both confirms that this is alluding to Maddie, because she says this time, there was a time before this in 2014. But also, this is like the verge of the breakup, or like during the breakup, or I think in the period where she's like, we're definitely gonna break up. Anyway, this is after Tortured Poets Department, like right there. The next track is Down Bad, and the whole concept of this is like aliens pick this girl up from the sky and then show her a whole new world and then leave. And that's what Taylor said this concept was kind of about. And who does that sound like it's about? It sounds like it's about Maddie. So this is just gonna be after the breakup, and I think this was like almost the first, or like one of the first songs she must have written about it, because she was like, what the hell just happened? Did he really pick me up in a cloud of sparkling dust? You know what I mean? So I'm gonna put this before public finds out again, just because I think she was just like dumbfounded here. I'm just gonna put it here. The next song is So Long London. This one's obviously about Joe. We're not gonna discuss this that much. We're gonna put it like, yeah, she's talking about, this could have been written when she was with him. It could be written like right around the time of the breakup. I'm just gonna put it like genuinely right here. Next up is But Daddy, I Love Him. This, I think everyone agrees, it was written as a response to kind of the public outlash that her relationship with Maddie Healy received. So we're just gonna put it right here on The Public Finds Out, okay? She was going crazy. She was like, Literally, I'd tell you something right now. I'd rather burn my whole life down than listen to one more second of all this bitching and moaning. I think this is also a commentary on all of her relationships as a whole and like the public scrutinizing those, but especially Maddie Healy. Here I have the image from, the fans wrote like an open letter to Taylor Swift in order to get her to stop dating Maddie Healy, which is just ridiculous. I would write this song too, a much trashier version, but still, of if people did that to me. Next up is Fresh Out of the Slammer. The Slammer in this case, I think pretty obviously and widely agreed upon, is Joe, and then the person who she's running back home to is Maddie. She says, "Now, pretty baby, I'm running back home to you, fresh out the slammer. I know who my first call will be too." I think it's very hard to interpret the song any other way, especially because she says, "As I said in my letters, now that I know better, I will never lose my baby again." As she said in her letters, or maybe her songs, she won't lose Maddie again like she did in 2014. She's coming out of a long relationship that felt like jail to someone that she's been with prior. That said, we're going to put Fresh Out the Slammer right here in its rightful place right after So Long, London. Now, at this point, I want you to know that we've covered the leaving Joe and getting back together with Maddie territory. We've covered the public scrutiny that Maddie and Taylor's relationship faced. We've also covered a little bit of kind of their relationship going wrong. We have a whole 2 songs about like the progress of that. We also have a song about their past, kind of, Fortnite. So really, what is missing here from the timeline that a regular relationship takes? We don't have a singular honeymoon song about her and Maddie. And Taylor loves writing these songs. Like, this was legitimately like 80% of Lover, where all of the songs were just about this honeymoon phase where she's obsessed with this person that she's with and everything's going really great. Point being, I'd just like you to think about this a little bit and keep it in mind as we move on to discussing future songs. Because once again, isn't it so strange that the person she's daydreamed about for 10 years doesn't have a honeymoon song dedicated to them? Anyway, moving on to Florida. Florida's a difficult one because people were like, oh my god, what happened in Florida, you know? But in an interview, Taylor said it wasn't about anything specific, any specific event that happened in that state. It was just kind of following the concept of the Florida man, who we have an image of right here. But anyway, the concept of the Florida man was that people kind of go to Florida after they commit heinous crimes to kind of start a new life and cover up their past wrongdoings, which is the emotional state that she was in when she was writing this song. Now, when would she be in such an emotional state that she would literally want to just like throw her entire life away and go start a new life in another state? Was it after she broke up with Joe? I don't think so, because she went straight on to Maddie and seemed really happy about that. Was it when the public found out about her and Maddie and everyone was like, Taylor, what are you doing? In a really not polite way? I don't think so, because she was in her but daddy, I love him mood. She was like, I don't care about any of these people, I just want you. That was the vibe that we were getting. Now, after her breakup with Maddie, she was dealing with this person that she has been romanticizing for about a decade just up and leave. He essentially ghosted her based on her lyrics. So she was dealing with that, and then on top of all of that, the public found out again and started kind of scrutinizing these 2 breakups that she'd had in a really short period of time, and she was kind of forced to deal with the fact that this person that she went so quickly public with just kind of embarrassed her in front of everybody by leaving. And honestly, at that point, I'd want to move to Florida. Okay, I think the song was inspired by kind of this moment of just the public finding out. It doesn't really make sense to put it really anywhere else on the timeline. For the record, she like literally says in the song, I need to forget, so take me to Florida. Next up is Guilty as Sin, where Taylor's in a relationship with somebody, but she's fantasizing another person, and she's asking like, is this okay? Am I guilty as sin? I think we all agree that this is kind of what she was thinking while she was in her relationship with Joe, so I'm just gonna put this right around here. Yeah, I'm gonna leave Who's Afraid of Little Old Me alone for now, and we're gonna plug it into the timeline a bit later because I feel like this one is just like really, really unspecific, so we're gonna move on to the next one for now, but the ghostie is just gonna chill out over here. Now, moving on to I Can Fix Him, No Really I Can. This is the denial stage song of her being with Maddie. Maddie is known for causing controversies and overall not really thinking before he speaks, and this is exactly the kind of character that this person details. She says the smoke cloud billows out his mouth like a freight train through a small town, which is not only a reference to trains, which the band that Maddie is part of, the 1975, really often uses in their songs, but it's saying that first of all, he smokes, which Maddie does smoke, and second of all, can be used as a metaphor for someone that is just a loudmouth. She also says that her friends are like, God help her, when she tells him that he's her man, which I think explains the whole theme of the song, essentially. So we're gonna put this one right between Torture Poet's Department and My Boy Only Breaks His Favorite Toys, because I think My Boy Only Breaks His Favorite Toys was like kind of the pinnacle of realizing that this was going wrong. In I Can Fix Him, for a majority of the song, at least, she's still like, no, trust, like, I can make this better. But in My Boy Only Breaks His Favorite Toys, she's like, it's done. Moving on to Loss/Love of My Life. This is an especially difficult one because I too have a hard time believing that Taylor didn't write a song called Loss of My Life about Joe Alwyn, who she was with for 6 years. But if you look at the lyrics of Lommel, this does not point to Joe at all. She asks, who's going to stop us from waltzing back into rekindled flames if we know the steps anyway? This seems like someone that she's broken up with prior that she wants to get back together with. Now, all signs point to the fact that this was not her state of mind when she broke up with Joe. It seems that with Joe, she knew the breakup was coming from like a mile away, and she had essentially already said her goodbyes. Like, she tried to save the relationship, it didn't work out. After her breakup with Joe, it doesn't seem like there's potential for, rekindling flames. But with Maddie, it seems like she was left absolutely befuddled by him leaving and didn't really get to say any goodbyes. She literally wrote so many songs that we're going to get into later about not believing that it's really over. So this lyric definitely seems like it pertains to Maddie. And then the next line after this, we embroidered the memories of the time I was away, stitching we were just kids, babe. This is literally about an old flame that she had when she was younger. Please, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but explain to me how on earth this lyric is meant to pertain to Joe. Finally, to cement this, she says at the end of the song, what a valiant roar, what a bland goodbye. And I think this kind of perfectly encapsulates the ending of her relationship with Maddie, because it was such a big deal when they first got together, but it was a really bland goodbye in the sense that he just left, he ghosted her based on her lyrics. Maybe she wrote this about both of them, sourcing from both of these relationships, I don't know, but given these lines that definitely pertain to Maddie, I'm gonna put this after, public finds out again, in the grieving stage of this. Next up is I Can Do It With a Broken Heart. This was written definitely when Taylor was feeling a lot better, because she was still sad, but I don't think you could write this song while in the trenches, while what am I doing with my life? Where did this person go? You know what I mean? So I'm gonna put this right before, for now, I'm gonna put this right before Travis. Yeah. And then the next one is The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived. And in it she says, I don't want you back, I just want to know if ruining my sparkling summer was the goal. And maybe this isn't true, maybe she still wants him back, but this attitude of, you know what, it's fine, I don't need him back, I'm just still really mad though. I think we can put this right before I Can Do It With a Broken Heart, when she was feeling better. Because if you compare this song to what is being said in Lommel, I think there was definitely a period of time between these two songs, between going just I lost the love of my life to I don't even want you back, you know what I mean? Okay, moving on to The Alchemy. Remember when I said we didn't really have a honeymoon song about Maddie? Well, I'm gonna come back to that. Hear me out on this one, because the football references in The Alchemy, everybody knows about those. They're bright and clear, and they all point to Travis Kelce, who Taylor is dating now, who is a football player. Now, a common theory that has risen up, and that I believe with all of my heart, is that these football references were thrown in as a last minute resort to have some songs on the album be about Travis. Because if you really look at the underlying lyrics, the entirety of this song just points to Maddie. She says, what if I told you I'm back? The hospital was a drag, worst sleep that I've ever had, I circled you on a map. Now, she's coming out of something like the hospital, something like a jail, something like a long-term relationship, and circling this person on a map. Did she circle Travis on a map? No, she just met him. But with Maddie, she was like, I know where I'm going right after this relationship with Joe. So I really think this lyric is referring to him. And if we look at the later ones, this becomes abundantly clear, because she says, that child's play back in school was forgiven under my rule. I haven't come around in so long, but I'm coming back to where I belong, which means she had a relationship with this person when she was younger, and now she's coming back. These lyrics make absolutely no sense if you think about them in from the Travis perspective. The sign on your heart says it's still reserved for me. Did Travis reserve his heart for her? No. Did Maddie? Yes. Okay, game over. that was a funny one. Anyway, we're moving The Alchemy to as the designated honeymoon song for Maddie. Please, once again, prove to me that the song is about Travis. I'm open to suggestions, but it just, to me, it doesn't seem like it. We're gonna leave Clara Bow alone for now. We're gonna put her right next to Who's Afraid of Little Old Me, because she's a little bit unspecific too, and we're gonna move on to The Black Dog. In The Black Dog, she's singing about how this person that she's broken up with, or actually broke up with, which is more the vibe from the lyrics, is walking into this bar called The Black Dog, but they didn't turn off their location, so she can see it. And then she's like, I just don't understand how you don't miss me in The Black Dog. This, to me, implies that this was once again a breakup song written about Maddie, because we're really getting the vibe that she really didn't understand why he broke up with her. And to finish it off, she says, when someone plays the starting line and you jump up, but she's too young to know this song, the starting line is a band that Maddie and the 1975 have sampled, and it's one of their favorites, and that just kind of confirms it for me. So we're gonna put the Black Dog for now, like in the Lommel space, you know, like right next to it for now, because that's essentially the same vibe. She's like, damn, I want this person back. Next up, on a slightly different subject, is I'm Gonna Get You Back, which is essentially a song about not knowing whether you're angry with a person or not knowing whether you want to marry them, as she says in the lyrics, but really just being convinced that you're gonna get them back. She also says that this person drove her into a ditch like an Aston Martin, so I'm gonna go with the popular theory that the song is once again about Maddie, but I think this was at the very beginning of their breakup where she was like, you know what, I am mad at you, you know, but I still want you back, and that is going right before Down Bad. As we get into the anthology, we're going to skip a few more songs. So the Albatross, we're going to put right along with our little collection of non-specific ones right on top, and we're going to place those later. And we're going to move on to Chloe or Sam or Sophia or Marcus, which you might think is unspecific, but if you look at the lyrics, it is actually very specific. She literally says, as the decade would play us for fools and you saw my bones out with somebody new, you just watched it happen. The decade is the key here. She and Maddie have been kind of orbiting around each other for around a decade. There's a bunch of clues in the song to this being about Maddie. She also, on the theme of kind of this being an old relationship, says, if you want to break my cold, cold heart, just say I loved you the way that you were, meaning she was different when she originally met this person, and that's true. She met him when she was way younger. We also have, I changed it into goddesses, villains, and fools, all to outrun the desertion of you. I saw a fun theory about this being about her 3 albums, which were 1989, Goddesses, Reputation, Villains, and Fools, Lover, kind of being these eras that she went through while she wasn't with him. And finally, the first line, which is a bit puzzling, she says, your hologram stumbled into my apartment, hands in the hair of somebody in darkness, like Chloe or Sam or Sophia or Marcus, and I just watched it happen. I also am for the theory that this is about Maddie kind of kissing a bunch of his fans at shows, which he does, but this then gets spread online, and she was probably essentially seeing these videos throughout the years of him doing that. And what is meant by a hologram here is just him on her phone screen, because as he's like a really popular star, she now has to face this phenomenon of him haunting her online, just like her past lovers are probably haunted by her media presence literally everywhere. So, okay, that being said, I think this was written, like, while she was with Joe. Because in the song, she doesn't say anything about him actually appearing after all that time. She kind of, it sounds almost like she's giving up on him doing so. So I'm gonna put this before Guilty as Sin. I'm gonna put this like way back. And you'll see what I mean. Actually, I'm just gonna, like, this song is like a sister song, I think, to Peter. So I'm just gonna do Peter now. Peter is very much the same type of vibe, and nobody can convince me that Peter is not about Maddie, because it says literally everything that is said in Chloe or Sam or Sophia or Marcus, but in a much more specific manner. She keeps saying, you said you were going to grow up and then you were going to come find me, which is like, okay, she's talking about someone from her past that she wants to reunite with. And then she says, you said you were going to come get me, but you are 25. Maddie was literally 25 during their brief little fling in 2014. And the song indicates that they kind of made each other this promise of coming back for each other, but it didn't end up working out. But at the end of the song, she also says, like, forgive me, Peter, but the woman who sits at the window has turned out the light, which is a reference to Wendy, of course, sitting out the window, but also indicates that Taylor's like done waiting for him, which is why I think this song was once again written like while she was with Joe. I don't think this was written before she was with Joe, because that would be both too far back for placing something on this album, and also because this sounds like really just sounds like a reject from Folklore, that she was like, I can't put this on the album because this is too specific, but I'm gonna save it for later, because Peter Pan is also mentioned in Folklore, and like in Closets Like Cedar just seems like a Folklore lyric. Anyway, my point being, we're gonna put this we're gonna put this as the first song. This was written like way back when, I think. Moving on to How Did It End, I think this was definitely written more so about the end of her relationship with Joe rather than her relationship with Maddie, because there's a lot of references to this relationship kind of dying slowly over time. She says, we were blind to unforeseen circumstances, we learned the right steps to different dances, whereas with her songs about Maddie, she tends to kind of blame Maddie more for this. And then she also says, my beloved ghost and me sitting in a tree, DYING, like their relationship slowly dying over time, and Joe essentially being a ghost by the end of it and not really being into the relationship, as we see in So Long London. There's also a line that kind of cements this for me in the first couple verses, she says he was a hothouse flower to my outdoorsman, which a hothouse flower is basically like kind of a cage for plants, and plants are grown in hothouses. So she's essentially saying that he wanted to stay inside while she wanted to go out and about, which is very true of her relationship with Joe, who seemed like he just wanted to stay inside and not go out in the public eye. I think this could have been written at the same time as So Long London, but based on the lyrics, I'm just going to put it like right a little bit after it, so between So Long London and Fresh Out the Slammer. Moving on to So High School, which is really a different theme from the previous tracks. High school vibes. I like this person. I feel like I'm back in high school because he makes me nervous and such. And so because of the lack of Travis songs on this album, really, I'm just going to designate this as a Travis song. You know, I have a hard time believing that she didn't write any about him, so I'm just going to put it here. Taylor in her Eras Tour performances as well kind of designates this as a Travis song. So I'm going to put it here. I'm going to put it as the last one. Okay, moving on to I Hate It Here. This is pretty self-explanatory. This is not specific. This isn't about a person. This is just about a state of mind. And when would Taylor, really hate it here? I think this was written after Lommel and The Black Dog and that assortment of songs where she was just kind of grieving Maddie in particular, and it probably moved on to just, damn, this sucks in general, but she kind of probably exhausted her writing about him, so she just wrote this one. I'm going to put it after Lommel for now. This is kind of, I think, a sister to Florida, but a much more calm one. You know what I mean? So maybe this was after Florida. But no, I feel like she would have written all these Maddie songs first before being like, I hate it here. I'm gonna put it after Lommel. I'm gonna stick with that. Now, the Kim song. If you didn't know, the capitalized letters spell Kim. This is about Kim. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna go right ahead and put this in that this could have been written in 2014 and I wouldn't know box, because it could have, maybe not because of the poetic language, but it sure as hell, I have no idea where to put this. Okay, this is gonna stay in the box. I Look in People's Windows is the next one. The whole message of the song is she wants to see this person one more time. She says, what if your eyes looked up and met mine one more time? And that's why she's looking through people's windows. Once again, I don't think this was her attitude towards Joe at the end of their relationship. I think she was done with it. And also, she says, I'm afflicted by the not knowing so, which means she doesn't really, this has such an impact on her because she doesn't know what could have happened. And I think that makes sense with Maddie because he ended it suddenly and she still doesn't know to this day what would have happened with them if it had kept going. So we're gonna slide I Hate It Here over because we've stuck with the narrative that this was written after all the I Miss Maddie songs. So we're gonna stick that in there. Once again, these are theories, right? But I feel like we have a pretty solid order going on so far. Next up is The Prophecy. The Prophecy is really interesting lyrically, but it's essentially saying, in its essence, that Taylor still hasn't found a life partner, and it's kind of her prophecy. She's like, maybe this isn't meant for me, maybe because of her reputation and her status, it's really difficult finding someone, and she's just had these 2 failed breakups, and she's like, please don't let this be the prophecy, please let me find someone. At least that's what I took from the song. And so I think this could be before or after I Hate It Here. Once again, after she's exhausted her songwriting about Maddie, she kind of moves on a little bit to other topics. I think maybe this was written actually before I Hate It Here, because she was sad about not being able to really find a good relationship with anybody, and then after that came just damn, I hate it here. I'm gonna go with that. And then the next one, oh man, we have a series of fun ones. Let's just discuss all of these honestly, because we have the most confusing ones left. Let's go back to the Albatross, because it's giving really the same kind of vibes as The Prophecy, because the Albatross is a traditional mythical sign of luck, but then the legend goes that if a sailor shoots an albatross, now it becomes a bad omen. And in this song, she's comparing herself to this albatross. In third person, she says, she's the albatross, she is here to destroy you. And then in the last couple verses, she says, I'm the albatross, I'm here to destroy you. And to me, I think this is a take on her reputation and how it impacts her relationship with men that she's with, having been warned about her reputation with guys in the press, and also about what it kind of takes to be with a person who's at that caliber of fame, because it must also be quite difficult having your name in the headlines once you're also with Taylor Swift. So just because of this theme that's going on here, I think this probably was written right after The Prophecy, because it's the same kind of theme, except now she's essentially blaming herself for this prophecy that she won't find someone, which is really sad, actually. That's really unfortunate. Let's move on to Cassandra. So Cassandra is essentially named after Cassandra of Troy, who could see the future, and was at the same time cursed to never be believed by those around her. So she warned Troy about the Trojan horse, apparently, but they didn't, like, nobody believed her, and the people in the Trojan horse were killed. And so she's once again kind of comparing herself to Cassandra, and she says, "So they filled my cell with snakes," which is, like, many people online have discussed this, and I think the conclusion everyone has come to is that she's referring to her literal cell phone being filled with snake emojis, which is what happened back in 2014 with the whole Kim Kanye drama. And this is essentially about that. This is about nobody believing her, and yeah, etc., etc. I'm actually gonna make a new category. I'm going to put Thank You, Amy and Cassandra way before Joe, because even though they were probably written while she was with him, she was just taking inspiration from whenever this happened, the Kim drama, like, was it 2016, 2015, 2014, one of those. Anyway, we're going to put this all the way back here for clarity's sake. Now, we're going to look at Who's Afraid of Little Old Me. In an interview, it says that Taylor revealed that she wrote the tune alone, sitting at a piano, in one of those moments when I felt bitter about all the things that we do to our artists as a society and as a culture. Now, there's several, like, events that could have inspired this. She could have taken inspiration from, like, the Kim Kanye drama, but that really wasn't really about, like, her as an artist. She could have taken inspiration from just literally anything. Like, there's a lot of negativity around her every day, or she could have written this kind of in response to the drama surrounding her and Maddie dating and everybody scrutinizing her. This could have been written while she was with Joe, but I'm gonna assume that this was written like in her I'm really sad phase following Maddie, because we have the prophecy and the albatross, which kind of touch on the concept of her reputation just ruining it for everybody, and also I hate it here, where she's just straight up I hate it here. So I think it makes sense for Who's Afraid of Little Old Me to kind of emerge after that, where she kind of turns this and kind of turns it into an anger, which we can also see in The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived. I'm trying to like sort them by mood because that's all we have to go off of. And so we have this sad period, and then we kind of have these kind of angry songs like Who's Afraid of Little Old Me and The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived. Moving on to, let's see, like Clara Bow is a really interesting song because it's about Clara Bow, who was an actress that had to make the transition from silent film to talking films. And she survived, but the essence of this is like artists have to keep reinventing themselves and have to keep the public entertained and keep up with all the trends, or they're just going to be cast away and forgotten. And that's how Taylor feels actually a lot of the time, it seems, because she also brought this up in Nothing New, which is a song on the Red album. But anyway, point being, the song is about that. It's kind of about her reputation. And so I'm going to put it right after I Hate It Here and between Who's Afraid of Little Old Me, because she's still kind of in Who's Afraid of Little Old Me. She's kind of mad now, but Clara Bow just has this kind of vibe to it that she's kind of just giving in and giving up. So in terms of like matching songs by mood, I think it fits well there. And also I just saw that I have this marked as Maddie Heartbreak gets somewhat better, but she's still mad at the press. Once again, Clara Bow and Who's Afraid of Little Old Me kind of really makes sense in this scenario. Because I think The Sun was releasing some wild stuff like, oh, Maddie and Taylor are back together like a couple months after they broke up and weren't showing literally any signs of getting back together. So that might have inspired one or two of these. Okay, moving on to, we only have 3 left. Let's put the manuscript somewhere. The manuscript is, I couldn't figure out what this was about for the longest time, but I think from reading various Reddit threads online that this is a song that essentially just looks back on this chapter, or just like on her whole life in general, and kind of closes off this chapter of her life as well. A manuscript is like a handwritten book essentially, and the theme of the Tortured Poets Department is almost like she's writing kind of a post-mortem analysis of all these things that have happened to her. The last lines of the manuscript are, "The only thing that's left is the manuscript, one last souvenir from my trip to your shores. Now and then I reread the manuscript, but the story isn't mine anymore." And this was also kind of the sentiment of the Tortured Poets Department poetry that she released, that was saying that this chapter in the poet's life is now closed and available for all of us to read. So I think this was written after Maddie and all of this public scrutiny that happened with both of her relationships. But I do think this must have been written like before at least So High School? Yeah. We're gonna put it before So High School, but after I Can Do It With a Broken Heart. Just because I Can Do It With a Broken Heart, I feel like was written as a literally as a hype song for Taylor herself. She was like, dang, I'm really sad. I need something to hype me up. And I think this was what did it. And actually looking back on that, I think I'm gonna switch I Can Do It With a Broken Heart and The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived, because The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived, just like the manuscript, kind of seemed like she's closing this chapter in her life. But I Can Do It With a Broken Heart just seems like she was trying to make herself feel better. And apparently it worked, you know, so good for her. So we have The Bolter and Robin left. The Bolt, I think this is about a fictional person, and it's about somebody having this trauma from their childhood that they now run from all their relationships. And I don't think Taylor like does that. I don't think Taylor's written about her personally doing that. So I'm gonna go and put that in this box of shame. This could have been written in 2014 and I wouldn't know. Actually, this probably could have been written during the folklore era, to be more specific, and I wouldn't know. And then the last song we have is Robin, which is essentially about preserving the innocence of a young child, more specifically Aaron Dessner's son, who's really young, who we have a picture of Taylor with here, is named Robin, so I think everyone agrees that the song was kind of a tribute to him. And I'm also going to put this in, this could have been written in, well, not in 2014, because I don't think that his son was born back then, but you get what I mean, you know, I don't know when this was written. And that's it for today, folks. I think we have put this in order. Some people are definitely going to disagree with me on this, and that's okay. That's fine. I can probably look back on this in a couple weeks and say, damn, what was I thinking? You know, some of these are really out of order, but you know, we'll never know. So I hope you enjoyed. That's it. Thanks for watching.